Hey everybody, it is Trags, Mike Petralia, back with the latest episode of the Jungle Roar podcast, brought to you by the great folks at Prize Picks and the Game Time app, and of course, our colleagues at CLNS Media. Well, we are already into 2024 Bengals training camp, 1 week in, about 6 practices in as we record this, and it is my pleasure to welcome back the one and only Richard Skinner, Skinny as we like to call him, of Local 12 here in Cincinnati, covering the Bengals for eons, I would call it. Skinny, how long have you been covering the Bengals?
Since the Stone Age, I believe.
Yeah, it just feels that way.
It feels like I reported on them first coming to town back in the 60s, Mike. No, I'm not
1968 was their first year, as a matter of fact. You know what, Skinny? This year, and I pointed this out to Elizabeth Blackburn, and I don't know if she knew it or not. I assume she knew it when I brought this up because of the locker room unveil on Tuesday morning, which was sensational. It's the 25th year of Paycor / Paul Brown Stadium. It's remarkable.
It is, and I was talking because there's a push on for Cleveland to get a new stadium, and you don't think in terms of we've been in First Energy Stadium or whatever the heck it's called now.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel old to me. Paycor doesn't feel old to me. And then you think about us growing up in the 70s when Riverfront Stadium started in 1970, and it ended in 1990, or ended in 2002 as Synergy Field, but ended for the Bengals in 1999. So 29 years of service for them in that stadium. I guess technically 28 because they started 99 in Paycor, and 20. It's already 25 in this stadium. It just doesn't. It felt like that gap from 70 to 98 was forever, and the gap from 99 to today feels like it just went in a snap.
Yeah, and I don't know why that is. Maybe we're just getting old, but obviously the Bengals have invested millions of dollars in trying to renovate it, and there will be a conversation, argument, however you want to term it, between the franchise and the city and the county about how to go forward with Paycor Stadium. How do you think that's going to unfold, Skinny? Quickly, or is it going to take time to get those improvements done?
I think it's going to take some time. I just think it's one of those ones that's going to drag. I mean, it can't drag for long because technically the lease is up in 2026.
Right.
I would think the Bengals, because the Bengals have an option to extend by next June. I would assume no matter where talks are, they would extend that. I can't believe they wouldn't do that, but maybe they don't. And like a lot of deals, Mike, and we'll get to one of those deals involving Jamar Chase in a minute. Yep. When there's no real sense of urgency, stuff doesn't seem to get done. It's maybe that's, we're kind of in that line of work ourselves. I am a terrible dawdler when I've got projects hanging out there. I'm terrific on deadline because the deadline is there and you have to meet that deadline. And I just think that's where, a lot of negotiations take place in the 11th hour, just because that's when the sense of urgency finally comes.
What did you think of the locker room unveil?
It was spectacular. I expected it to be really, really nice. They got dinged on the report card for a couple of years from the NFLPA. I mean, I didn't think the locker room was awful, but I
neither did I, by the way.
But I do understand the players. I mean, the whole hot water thing in the showers is embarrassing in my opinion. The phone charger circumstances was stupid in my opinion that they didn't have those at the lockers. But I think they outdid themselves. I think it's spectacular. And it's a lot of little touches from the Paul Brown signature. The players aren't going to care about this, but I thought it was cool. The Paul Brown signature on each player's locker, where you can put your helmet or a hat, if you will, and there's a fan in there that will dry it out for you. The fact that, Mike, they have those fans that kind of take the smell out of the locker room. And honestly, yesterday when we were in there, again, it's brand new, mind you, but we were in there post-practice, and after a hot day where players are sweaty and stinking and all that stuff, you didn't smell like a locker room, did it?
No, it did not. I was telling someone else, I don't know if this was you or not, hockey locker rooms need that as much as football locker rooms. Anybody who's ever been in an NHL or college hockey locker room, they're repugnant, repulsive, just really overpowering. Football locker rooms, because naturally they're bigger, more players, usually it's not as intense. But the thing that I will tell people that they may not be aware of, and I'd like to get your input on this, this was done for as much as a lot of this had to do with helping the job of Adam Nolan, the equipment manager, as it did making the players comfortable. Obviously, you make the millions of dollars in upgrades to that locker room. You're doing it for the player and the player comfort and the features and the amenities. But also, there's this aspect that this should bring the equipment and the way the Bengals operate up to first class level.
Yeah, agreed. And again, I mean, just the fact of, I don't know what equipment managers did with helmets prior to having that fan in there to maybe they had to line them up and let them dry out and then put them all back in the locker themselves. That's probably what took place. I mean, it's a time saving element. Player comes in, takes off helmet, instead of giving it to the equipment manager for him to do something with, you just put it in the top of your locker and let the fan take care of it and dry it out before you have to put it on the next day. And I think little things like that probably will help Adam immensely, and we see him around the facility all the time. He works his tail end off.
Yes.
And one of those guys behind the scenes that doesn't get recognized very often. And he was taking us through all the steps of what the locker is. The only fault I found in the locker, Mike, the only fault, and you saw it too, you saw it unfold. So at the very top of the locker, the players pull down this little drawdown thing where they can put their shoulder pads, and it's very nice. Except 6'4" quarterback Joe Burrow couldn't quite reach it without getting onto his chair in his locker.
So that thought did cross my mind, and I'm like, uh-oh. I have this vision of somebody like getting up on a chair or not getting the proper step stool to put their equipment up there and him falling. And as a matter of fact, I did see Joe Burrow go over to one of the young locker room attendants about something, pointing up to the top of his locker. I do wonder if that's what Burrow was talking about. Like, I'm not getting up there and putting my shoulder pads up there. Somebody's going to have to do that for me.
Yeah, like I said, I saw him get on that chair, and I thought, okay, all it takes is that chair to be wobbly one day, or not be fully functional, or somebody decide it's going to be cutesy to do a little horseplay while he's up on that. I would hope nobody's that dopey in the locker room to do something like that. But yeah, that's one of those ones where I'm like, they thought of everything from chargers to cup holders to how comfortable the seat in the locker is to the space to the area where you can put your shoes and the drying out area for that as well. I mean, look, honestly, I think they thought of just about everything,
right?
Except for, maybe that's a little too high up for the player to. I mean, again, Joe is not as. I mean, we're not talking to some 5'8" little scat.
He's 6'4".
He's 6'4". He couldn't reach it.
So we'll see how that turns out. But again, I think they overall did an outstanding job.
Great.
You know what was in the locker of Jamar Chase? It wasn't a helmet. It was his hat.
Listen, this whole holdout thing we'll get to here in a second, or hold in, I guess.
We're getting to it right now, Skinny.
But I will tell you, I thought that was a funny touch.
I thought it was hilarious. And I don't know. I mean, the Bengals know, everybody in that locker room knows what's going on with Jamar Chase. He's holding in, he's attending. He even signed autographs yesterday at camp practice on Tuesday, first day of full pads practice. But it's hovering over the team right now. And what the Bengals have to be careful of, and they may or may not have that much control over it, depending on how aggressive they want to get in negotiations with Jamar Chase and his representation. But they don't want Jamar to become a distraction. They don't want him to become disengaged with the team. Right now, I think he's pretty much engaged for a guy that's not participating in practice.
Yeah, so yesterday it's kind of the first time I've seen. I know he's done it on other fields, but the first time I saw him that close to where we were, actually, as wide receivers were doing some route running on air. He was watching and I think mentoring some of the young guys about maybe takeoff, leverage, whatever it was. But he was very engaged with that. So, to your point, he is engaged. But Mike, we've talked about this a ton amongst ourselves, and I wrote a column a couple of days ago, and I know people are going to get angry at this, and some already have. For me, the holdout for Jamar Chase only makes our hold in. I keep calling it a holdout because he's holding in technically. It only makes sense, Mike, and I wrote this, if he's willing to miss games. I mean, if this lingers for 3 weeks and he capitulates, what did he gain? I mean, maybe what he gains is there's a contract next week for all we know. Maybe that is what he gained. Maybe the Bengals do blink, but man, you're dealing with a dude that doesn't blink very much, and a front office that doesn't blink very much, and they've got him under team control for 2 years. And let me tell you, I know everybody now screams, pay the player, pay the player. Listen, Jamar Chase is a great player. I'm not going to even come close to making a case that he shouldn't get paid. But these players are under contract, and he's under contract for 2 more years, and he's guaranteed $21.8 million next year. And a lot of these guys that have done this, Justin Jefferson played in his 4th season. He got signed before his 5th. Jamar is entering his 4th season. Here's the thing. If a team gives out all this guaranteed money and the player gets catastrophically hurt, they're going to get it back? Is the player going to give it back? And so that to me is where players got to stop bitching about this. And honestly, this is your union negotiated the 5th-year option, mostly as a protection for rookies in the 1st round to give them a guaranteed 5th year at a staggering sum of money, which is what the franchise tag is this year, $21.8 million. That's what Jamar makes next year. So listen, again, this only makes sense to me either if they feel like they're close, and this is Jamar trying to push it over the edge by forcing their hand a little bit, or Jamar's willing to sit games. That's the only other way he's going to send a message that he's not happy with this. Again, if he signs on August, or if he decides to come to practice on August 20th, what did you accomplish with this?
Nothing except resting your body a little bit. And there is that element of that. Maybe Jamar doesn't want to risk injury when he feels like, there is a big contract out there waiting for him, or there's a big season out there waiting for him, setting up the next big contract. I don't believe, Skinny, that the contract gets done before the season. I don't think it gets done before next year. I think they're too far down the road, and I think the Bengals are willing to let it play out. And sometimes if you're a team like the Bengals, sometimes it's better to watch the situation play out. The Bengals obviously chose to do that with T. Higgins, sign him to the franchise tender. They do have Jermaine Burton. I think he's going to be a sensational rookie. I think he has that kind of ability. But look, human nature being what it is, Jamar Chase sees all the money getting doled out there. He's like, what is my only response to all of this? Because I feel like I'm one of the 5 best receivers in the game, and I'm getting paid like I'm the 20th. My only
That's what
response,
happens on rookie deals, though. That's why
understood. But it's what I'm saying, Skinny, is to me, this is human nature. And I think Jamar is just saying to everybody, I'm not going to give you any extra ounce of my effort without being paid for it.
So here's the disappointing part to that then. What did Dan Pitcher tell us at the scouting combine he wanted to do with Jamar Chase this season? More. He wanted to put him in the slot more, right? He wanted to,
yes.
So wouldn't you like to see what that looks like in camp? Wouldn't Jamar and Joe like to see how that looks like, and maybe the different reads that Joe's going to have for Jamar coming out of the slot? Wouldn't you want to have a lot of time to look at that kind of stuff? Wouldn't that behoove you and your football team to do that?
I don't think they're going to go down that path now. I mean, I think that's not off the table, I would think.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe he is, to Zach Taylor's point the other day when he called him a freak, maybe he is a guy that literally, I mean, you could, on the day of the New England game, you could get him in a cab and he rolls out at 5-1 on the field and you go, Jamar, we're going to run you some plays in the slot. And he goes and does it spectacularly. He is that kind of a player. I mean, I don't discount that part, that he could literally roll out with a week's worth of practice, a day's worth of practice, 5 minutes worth of practice, and go perform at a high level in a game. I don't doubt that at all. I just don't know what's accomplished by this at the moment, unless he's willing to take this to the nth degree.
There's nothing better during the summer than experiencing a sunny afternoon at the ballpark, or maybe a nice summer evening, catching a ball game live in person, not streaming, not on your phone, not on the radio, not on the TV. I remember driving down from Maine every summer. It was a big deal. We get tickets to see the Red Sox at Fenway Park. And I just remember seeing the green grass as you'd walk up through the tunnel. It was like heaven. And I want you to have the same feeling. So go download the Game Time app and go see a game. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, so it's really easy to use. You can get your tickets faster and easier. Plus, as you get closer to the first pitch, the prices on Game Time actually go down. They have killer last-minute deals. They have the lowest price guarantee, and you can check out the view from your seats. Now, it's really easy. You just go to your phone, you download the Game Time app, you scan it, and you can see there are great seats to the Sox and the Yankees, or if you want that down-home minor league feeling, you can go see the Woo Sox or your favorite minor league club that's close to you. I go to Worcester and Polo Park. It is a great place to take the family to see a game. Very economical, too. Plus, Game Time also has great deals on the New England Revolution and Patriot preseason games. You can get last-minute deals and save up to 60% off on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. You could save even more when you choose the section and you let Game Time choose the seats. You always get the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed.
You've been around Mike Brown much more than I have. You've covered this team much longer than I have. Can you ever remember a situation where something like this was resolved cordially? Anything
No.
off the top of your head?
No. Carson Palmer got traded, right? I mean,
Yeah, and we're not going down that path. I don't see.
I'm with you. I'm just saying. You asked, and that's why I'm answering. I mean, Carson Palmer got traded, so there's that.
But in terms of it being resolved cordially, like the two sides come to an agreement.
I mean, Joe Burrow and the team came cordially together, right? I mean, but we all knew that was going to happen. They were going to always pay him, and I do think they're going to pay Jamar. The Bengals, as you know, Mike, and just for the audience, just to remember, they just don't like giving out guaranteed money other than signing bonus money. They gave A.J. Green a little bit in the form of roster bonus when he got extended in 2015. It wasn't a ton, but it was a decent amount. They let, again, this is a different number, but they let Von Bell walk 2 seasons ago because Carolina guaranteed second-year money. I mean, Carolina is literally paying Von Bell $6 million this year to play for the Bengals. So, I mean, the Bengals just don't. You could argue they should, but I made this point to some other people on the beat, and maybe you were around when I said, at some point there's going to be a team that's going to say the value that this guy is asking for is just not worth it in guaranteed money. If you look at the wonderful site, I always don't know how to pronounce it, Spotrac or Spotrac, but we all use it for valuations, salaries, and where contracts stand. They've got a valuation of him of 3 years, $90 million. That's probably right, but is he going to ask 4 years and $120 million? And does he want $100 million of that guaranteed? And I think that's where the chasm is how many years are they looking at? I think they could come to the agreement of what the finances of it are, just not what the guarantees are.
I also think that, and I know I've spoken to James Rapine about this, if you're Jamar, you probably want a shorter contract and more money because you want an extra year to play with when you hit the free agency market.
Yeah, and that's the other part, though. So next year, again, they picked up his fifth-year option. It's $21.8 million guaranteed. If they do the contract now, can you restructure it to where it's, that if he wants to restructure that third year is included into next year, or is there a fuss of, no, we want to tack 3 years on after your fifth year? That takes him into his 8th year in the NFL when he hits free agency. There ain't a lot of wide receivers that go past 8, 9, 10 years and still play at an extraordinarily high level. There's some, but not a ton. Now, Jamar can be an exception to the rule. He looks, again, he's a freak. He came into the league at a younger age than some of the receivers that hit that plateau in their careers. So this could be way different, but statistically, they're just, when you get 8, 9, 10 years in and you start to get to your 30s, I never thought AJ Green fell off the cliff, Mike. Now, some of that was injury related, but that cat just literally fell off the cliff in terms of production.
And who knows what's going to happen with Jamar, but I really do believe that Jamar takes care of himself.
Agreed.
He's in exceptional shape.
No question. Yeah, no question. That's why I said you could roll him out there with not an ounce of practice on Sunday, whatever that is, September the 8th, and he could go out and dominate the New England Patriots. I fully could believe that.
So let's move on to the rest of the wide receiver core and Joe Burrow. And how do you think they've looked so far in camp?
Andre Yoshivasha obviously was great until yesterday. He had a couple of drops yesterday, and I'm not going to ding him completely for that. T. Higgins has had some drops at times. Everybody. Jamar had that one camp where he dropped. It happens. So he dropped a couple yesterday, but he's had a really good camp. Charlie Jones had a great day yesterday. Not just a good day. I thought he had a great day yesterday. Jermaine Burton has shown some flashes. I've seen at times Joe Burrow talk to him as he's come off the field trying to get him to run a route a certain way, and that's understandable. That's what a good veteran quarterback should do. But there's been times where he's looked like the explosive guy that you wanted him to look like. And then some of the other guys, I mean, Kendrick Pryor keeps popping. Shedrick Jackson has had his moments. So I think it's an extraordinarily deep room. And now let's just see if some of these guys have to play.
What do you make of the $900,000 contract Hakeem Butler was signed to reportedly?
Yeah, that's
it was a little bit eyebrow raising.
Yeah, I will say this. You talk about physical attributes. He's got everything you want. He's got size. His athletic score on Raz is really, really good. I don't think he runs overly fast, but he gets separation. He made a couple of good catches in the Sunday night practice. One kind of a fade along the sidelines where, he showed good body control, showed good hands. I watched him yesterday again, they were running some routes on air before they got into the meat of 11-on-11 stuff. And Jake Browning threw a pass way behind him, and he kind of contorted his body and just reached up one-handed and snagged it like it was a tennis ball, for goodness sakes. So the athleticism is there. And I would think at that contract level, they're expecting him to stick. And so I don't know if this is tied to Jamar Chase, if this is they feel like they've got a steal in this guy. $900,000, you can always let that go, and it's not going to be a big deal, but it's a good chunk of change if he does stick.
Well, I mean, and the one thing that strikes me about this wide receiver room is how incredibly deep it is. And I'm just wondering how many looks we see in preseason games and what kind of decisions are going to. I came into this camp thinking the top 6 wide receiver spots are locks.
Agreed. I'm with you. I thought if they kept the 7th, Shedrick Jackson might be in the push, or Kendrick Pryor, but I didn't think they were going to keep 7. Now I do think they keep 7, and they're still going to have a hard decision on numbers 8, 9, and 10 to cut and hope to get to the practice squad.
All right, let's move on to the defense. Lou Anarumo says he's liked what he's seen so far. He told us that on Tuesday after the first padded practice of training camp. And I don't know about you, and this is dangerous sometimes, Skinny, to read body language. I thought Lou Anarumo's body language was pretty positive yesterday, like almost a sense of relief a little bit that he has some veterans back on the roster, on the defense, on the first team, and he feels more confident with the personnel he has on the field.
Yeah, and I think he feels confident on the guys on the back end that are not going to allow so many big plays and are going to communicate correctly. Right. Again, and that's where you go back to last year, and he made the mention of it at the combine prior to last offseason of, it would be a disaster if they lost both Jesse Bates and Von Bell. He full well knew they were losing Jesse Bates. I think he fully expected to get Von back. And I would have loved to have seen what the pairing of Von and Dax Hill would have done to allow Dax to come along, as opposed to Dax getting thrust into a fairly new spot in a huge role and taking a free agent off the street who doesn't know the defense and Nick Scott and pairing them together and saying, okay, this is going to work. And it didn't. I thought it might work, but it didn't. And now he's got I think for Lou Anarumo, Von Bell is such a security blanket in so many ways that having him back probably puts him at ease.
I do too. And another player that was back on Tuesday was Cam Taylor-Britt. He missed the first 5 practices, all of which were in shorts and shells, but he missed those first 5 practices recovering from tonsillitis. And then he gets thrust right into one-on-ones with T. Higgins. I love that. And I had the privilege of being right on the sideline, right in front of their one of their first battles, one-on-one, as Joe Burrow was back in the pocket throwing T a ball. T. Higgins fought off Cam Taylor-Britt and bobbled the ball and then recovered and caught the ball. What did you think of those two going at each other yesterday?
I mean, that's what you want to see, right? The old, I hate to use it because it's such a cliche, iron sharpens iron, right?
Right.
I think T's a terrific wide receiver, and I think Cam last year showed he's a top flight cornerback, and it's good to see those guys go against each other. I got to give Cam a lot of credit. I mean, he wasn't really doing hardly anything. He said, we talked to him a little bit after practice because they wanted the stitches for his tonsils being taken out to kind of heal. And he said, I was a little winded. They did spot him in the 11-on-11s. He only did a handful of reps, maybe, 3 here and then sit out a few and then come back in a couple there. And it's wise. And he said, I was trying to catch my breath, but I was honestly pleasantly surprised for a guy that had kind of missed some of that cardio work to get thrown in on that day,
right,
in that weather, and honestly hold his own for the snaps that he played.
Yeah, and I think Cam Taylor-Britt is going to emerge, well, continue to grow as a leader on the back end of that defense.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. I really like him. I like everything about his game. I think he's a good cover guy, good teammate. To your point, he's now probably got to be the mentor, a guy who doesn't have a lot of he doesn't have a ton of starts under his belt either, a year and a half's worth. But it's a year and a half's worth versus on the other side, DJ Turner, who has eight starts under his belt, and Dax Hill, who has one cornerback start under his belt, and it came as a slot corner as a rookie. So, he's the vet in the room, if you will, and it came very quickly for him.
What have you thought of Dax Hill and DJ Turner and their battles? I think this is going to be a fascinating competition to watch, Skinny. But I don't have a good read right now. I guess it's Dax Hill's job for right now, but there are signs in the way DJ Turner plays the position that I think DJ Turner is more the pure outside corner, just because I think he has a little more quickness. But at this point, it's still flip a coin to me.
Yeah, and again, there's no depth chart set yesterday, but we can, when the starting group is out there and certain guys are out with the starting group, you consider that guy a first teamer at the moment. And so Dax took the reps opposite Cam Taylor-Britt. Actually, Cam Taylor-Britt and DJ Turner are the two that rotated at the other corner spot. I think DJ's had a really good camp. That feels like every day he kept having a pass breakup or two. And Dax has had his moments too. Dax also had a moment where it's either Shedrick Jackson or Trenton Irwin, I can't remember which, beat him up the sideline on a practice. I think it was one that you were not at. Might have been Friday's practice.
Last Friday.
Friday's practice. He beat him up the sidelines. And it was actually, honestly, I think it was the best throw Joe Burrow's had in camp. He just dropped one right in the bucket on him on that play. So, I think this battle goes on throughout the entire preseason. And I do think Dax ends up winning the job. But I could also see a nice rotation on the outside to keep guys fresh where, DJ Turner plays 50, whoever the backup is plays 50 or 60 snaps a game, 30 in place of one guy, 20 in place of another guy. And when you go to a super dime, maybe, all those corners are in the game. So I think there's going to be a valuable part for whoever doesn't start, if you will.
Look, I think the rookies, McKinley Jackson and, of course, Chris Jenkins Jr., I think they're going to be very much a part of Lou Anarumo's defense. I think they're going to have to be. That there is that part of it as well. They were drafted because the team believes that these guys can step in and be contributors right away. I think Sheldon Rankins is going to be, good to very good. I mean, he could really give the Bengals maybe some quickness and burst in that defensive line that they didn't have last year. Myles Murphy's got to be better than he was on day one. However, I'm not going to panic over one uneven, even poor performance at training camp.
Yeah, and honestly, you hate to do this because it's so early in his career. I mean, was that more about where Amarius Mims is as opposed to what Myles Murphy couldn't do? I mean, Mims dominated Murphy in that practice.
There was one picture, Skinny, that I think the Bengals put out on their Twitter that showed Mims engaged with Myles Murphy, towering over him, locking him up. And I'm like, that looked like all-world tackle play,
right?
In terms of the technique, positioning, and all of that.
Yeah, and that's where, again, I don't want to do that after one padded practice for a kid who doesn't even have a lot of college experience.
Right.
But it was impressive to watch. And it wasn't just that rep that you're talking. I mean, there were numerous reps. And I know that would everybody go, well, maybe that means Myles Murphy. Well, I don't know if it did or didn't. I thought Myles played really well last year at the end of the year down the stretch. Lou Anarumo's made mention of that, and he believes he's going to take a step forward. I did want to ask Lou on media day, and we didn't have very much time with him because Mike Brown came very quickly, and so we only talked for Lou for a minute. I was wondering, are you looking forward to playing more of a rotational defensive line across the board? And because Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson sat out yesterday because of injury, Joseph Osai started at one end, Murphy started at another, and we saw some rotation in the tackles. I don't think it's a two platoon group, Mike, but I do think he's got a chance to just keep so many guys fresh on that defensive line by rotating them more. And he kind of answered that to us yesterday when he kind of talked about, I'd like to get a rotation going up front.
What do you think of the Trey Hendrickson situation? I mean, is it an injury?
Okay, so again, I'm going to probably get dinged from fans, but I'm going to just, you asked me the question, I'm going to answer as honestly as I can.
That's why we have you on, Skinny.
I always have to take a player at his word that he's hurt. And I can't ever tell you, the extent of an injury and, what is one guy keep him out for 5 days, what another guy keeps him out for 2 days. It's just different people, different things. So I hate to question that. So I'm going to take them at their word. But there's also a part of me that really says, okay, he practiced on day one. I don't remember him getting hurt. I didn't see him get hurt. Again, that doesn't mean I don't see everything. You don't see everything. We don't see everything. But if I remember rightly, he participated the entire practice, and he hasn't practiced since. And there's a part of me, don't forget, we all know this. He's the one that came out. His agent at least said that he was willing to retire and not play if he didn't get a contract extension. The Bengals went, right, sure, lunkhead. No, you're gonna play. And so then, a couple of weeks later, he does a mea culpa to me. I love it, and I'm gonna play, and he is. But then I wonder if he sees Jamar across the field and goes, yeah, maybe that's a way to make my voice heard. So my read is that it could be a hold in, but I will have to take a player at his word and the coaching staff at his word that he's hurt at the moment. And so we'll see if this lingers on because, Zach didn't have to tell us what the injury is. He was asked what the injury was, and he's not required to because it is preseason. They don't put out injury reports. When I hear that kind of bugs me a little bit too, that it feels like, okay, is it really something or not?
Well, and that's where, I think Zach would normally disclose what it is if it's a minor injury and the player is expected right back. So, that is something to take into consideration. You get into real dangerous territory, Skinny, and you've been around long enough to know this. When you start reading into situations and projecting whether or not a guy is feigning an injury or has a very minor injury but is making more of it, you don't know. So you're right. The smart play here is to take the player at his word, especially this early in camp. He's a veteran. He knows what he needs to do. And we saw him running sprints on Tuesday. He looked totally fine, showing bursts, showing everything.
Yeah, and honestly, Mike, it's probably something about in the last 5 years or so where more players are making business decisions. And I do understand it. We're talking about generational wealth a lot of times. I fully get that. But my belief in players and the whole injury thing really started to wane the year AJ Green kept telling us each week, I might be coming back. And then nope, he didn't play. And the coaching staff, you think AJ can come back? And then he didn't play. And he made business decisions on a bad team that year of saying, Joe Burrow ain't here. And I'm not, no way. I'm not going to play for this crap team. And I think Paul Dehner Jr. and I called it out pretty quickly. And we both got a little bit roasted for it. And that's fine. But AJ made business decision and it feels like you're seeing that more and more across the league, right? I never knew what a hold-in was until the last couple of years. I really didn't. I knew what a holdout was, but I didn't know what a hold-in was.
What are we going to see in the next week leading up to the Tampa Bay preseason opener on August 10th?
Yeah, I hope we see a longer live tackling period. They did it with the threes yesterday. I thought it was good. That's probably because those guys are going to get a chunk of the playing time in that preseason game, number one. And I do think we need to see Joe Burrow evolve a little bit more, Mike. I've not been disappointed, but I haven't been wowed to the point where, he's completely back. He's had some wonky moments. He's had some wonky throws. He had two yesterday, one where he sailed one way over T. Higgins' head on an in route, another one where he short hopped T on a comeback. And the ball comes out differently. I think you would agree with that. And Joe even mentioned it's not spinning the way he wants it to. And again, we're a week into this, and I don't think I expected him to hit the ground fully running. He's also made some good throws. He's still got great timing. He's still got great decision making. He still puts the ball, it goes to the receiver it's supposed to go to. But I'd like to see that evolve a little bit more in the next week, even though he probably won't play in the Tampa game. He is going to play in the preseason per Zach, but I don't think it'll be the Tampa game. I could be wrong.
And I think I always caution people with Joe Burrow. To me, his number one skill isn't necessarily physical. It's the way he reads the defense pre-snap, the way he moves the chess pieces on the board, the old football cliche. He does that, and if you ask Zach, better than any quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, he made a throw yesterday. It was in a low red zone. I think they were at the 9 or 10 yard line, and he made it look so. It's like one of those ones where it's like he was playing pitch and catch with nobody on the field defensively. And it was against the first team defense, and he looks towards the middle, like that's where his initial target was going to go. And at the last second, he just turns and flips one to Charlie Jones, making an out by the pylon. He was wide open, and it looked just so effort and easy. And that's to your point. I mean, that's still what he does really, really well.
Yeah, it really is. And it'll be interesting to see how he changes his typical routine getting ready for the season this preseason as opposed to his previous 4 seasons. Hey, Skinny, can I compliment you?
On what, Mikey?
Your backdrop. I love it. Nature suits you very well. Nature very much suits you.
Well, so I'm fixing up a part of one of my. I don't have. I've got a fairly. We got 5 or 6 bedrooms in this house. We had 2 children and dogs and whatever. And one of them's a sewing room. One of them was the kids' play room. A couple kids' bedrooms. Mike, in my house, the corner of my house that is mine is my side of the bed, my nightstand, and my closet. That's all that in a house full of women. That's all I have. So I'm in the process of in my both daughters are out of the house now. They're grown up. I'm taking where she had all of her little mementos from like concerts she went to and events she did. I'm taking all of that down to put memorabilia and stuff up to have that as a backdrop when the weather turns. But I've been doing podcasts outside for about a month now, and I kind of enjoy it. I like the backdrop.
I'm telling you, it looks very refreshing, Skinny. Anything else you're working on, by the way, on Local 12? What a segue that was.
Yeah, it is indeed. You can catch the podcast with Chris Rankle and I every day after training camp practices, and then my normal podcast, the weekly one with Rick Roaring as well, and plus all the coverage from Bengals training camp at local12.com.
He is Richard Skinner, Skinny as we call him. You can follow him on the X. At Local 12 Skinny, correct?
That is correct, Mikey. Correct.
All right. He's Richard Skinner. I am Mike Petraglia, Trags. Want to thank everybody for downloading this episode of the Jungle Roar podcast. Thank our terrific sponsors, the Game Time app and Prize Picks, and of course our great staff at CLNS Media. Until next week, keep that jungle roaring.